My name's Josh. Congratulations on owning the top-rated music software in the world, Opcode Systems Vision. The first thing we're going to do on this video is get set up, get all your instruments plugged in, and then get the Opcode software configured correctly for your computer music studio. Then we'll take a quick tour of Vision. We'll see how the program's laid out, and then we'll do a little song to see how the basic recording and editing functions work in a real-world context. Now, if you're a certified Midi guru, you're already going to know a lot of the things we're going to talk about, but stay tuned anyway because you're sure to learn something, and even if you don't, there are some very corny jokes coming up later. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started. Midi is a secret code that goes down these Midi cables that allows all different types of devices from all different manufacturers to all talk to each other and work together to make music. For this video, we're going to be looking at three types of Midi devices: controllers, computers, and sound sources.
A Midi controller is an instrument you play that has a Midi out jack. As you play, Midi note messages come out of the Midi out jack. Let's look at one of these. The C4 means the note was a C, the octave was a 4, and the velocity can range from 0 to 127.
Now, why are we calling these Midi note messages? Because Midi notes are not sound yet. You can't hear Midi notes any more than you can hear notes printed on a piece of paper. Just like music notation is a type of secret code used to express a sequence of notes printed on paper, Midi is a type of secret code used to express a sequence of notes in digital form. The next type of Midi device we'll look at is computers. With sequencing software like Vision, the computer acts as a Midi recorder. As you play, it remembers which notes you played, when you played them, and how hard you hit the key. And because all the computer is remembering is one little code for each note, do you know how many songs will fit on an average hard drive? 1 zillion. Isn't that amazing?
Computers need a special Midi interface to work with your other instruments. Sound sources are the only part of your Midi system that actually make any sound. Sound sources have audio outputs that you want to hook up to an amplifier and speakers.
Now, most sound sources are capable of playing several different instrument sounds at the same time, like drums, bass, piano, flute, and birds chirping. This is called being multi-timbral. In fact, most keyboards or sound modules will give you 16 different instrument sounds at the same time, which is like having your own 16-piece band at your own house every day that won't clean out your fridge. Pretty neat. But now I know what you're thinking. You're wondering, okay, well, if you just have one Midi cable going to a sound source, and you could have like 16 different instrument parts on it, what keeps those parts from getting all mixed in together? Very good question. That's why there are different Midi channels. If you set each instrument to its own channel, for example, piano on channel 1, bass on channel 2, drums on channel 10, birds chirping on channel 5, then as the sound source is receiving all these note messages, it knows what instrument is supposed to play them. So it can take the piano notes, give them to the piano player, the drum notes, give them to the drummer, the birds chirping notes, give them to the birds. Very smart of you to figure that out.
Now, some keyboards are just Midi controllers, but most keyboards actually have a built-in sound source.
You're probably thinking, there must be some kind of direct internal connection between the keys and the built-in sound source, because when you play the keys, you can hear sounds.
This is because your keyboard is set to local on. When using your keyboard with a computer, however, it's very important that you turn local off. How come? Because if you don't, you're trying to control the built-in sound source directly with the keys, and also the computer is trying to control it at the same time. And that is very confusing for that poor sound source.
So now you can see it's pretty simple to hook up a computer music studio.
Let's look at a simple example. A keyboard with a built-in sound source and a simple computer interface with just one Midi in and one Midi out. First, make sure all your equipment is turned off before connecting any cables. Now plug your computer interface into your computer into either the modem or the printer ports. Now connect the Midi out of your keyboard into the Midi in on your computer interface. Connect the Midi out of the computer interface into the Midi in of your keyboard. Remember to turn local off on the keyboard. Plug the audio outputs of the keyboard into a mixer amplifier or plug some headphones in and you're done. Good job. But what if you add a sound module to this system? Just connect the Midi through of your keyboard into the Midi in of the first sound module. Got one more? Connect the MIDI through of your first module into the MIDI in of the second. And so on. If your MIDI interface has many MIDI outs, hook each MIDI out to a MIDI in on each of your MIDI devices. If you have one of those deluxe multi-port MIDI interfaces like the Opcode Studio 4 or Studio 5, connect all the MIDI outs of all your MIDI devices into a MIDI in on your interface.
Now we're going to set up OMS. OMS is very cool. It's like creating a little picture of your whole computer music studio inside your computer. So any program you run can look at that little picture and see what MIDI equipment you have and where it's plugged in. If you just take a few minutes to set up OMS correctly, it's just going to make your whole setup work a lot better.
First, I'll find the OMS setup application on my hard drive and double-click it. And the first thing OMS says is, AppleTalk is on. It can make MIDI communication less reliable. Well, I'm going to say turn it off. Now it says make sure the switches on my interface are set to MIDI. Okay, they are, so I'm going to say OK. Now OMS wants to know to which ports I connected my MIDI interface. Well, I connected mine to both my modem and my printer port, so I'm going to check both these boxes and say search. Now OMS is reaching out. It's going to try to identify the type of MIDI interface I have. And there's my interface, Opcode Studio 3, both modem and printer ports. Okay, and now OMS is going to try to identify the keyboards and modules I have. Well, it came up with a couple of question marks, but that's all right. I'm going to say OK. It asked me to name my studio, so I'll call this Josh's Studio. I'm going to save it in a safe place. I think I'll save it in the OMS Applications folder. That's all right. Say Save. And here's our studio setup. Notice the diamond in front of the name, Josh's Studio. This indicates that this is our current studio setup, the one that is active at this time. Well, I'm going to customize this to make it match my studio. The first thing I'm going to do is take this question mark instrument, double-click it. I'm going to look for the manufacturer of my keyboard. But look, it's not on there. Should I panic? Nah, I'm just going to think of a name for it. How about keyboard? Now my keyboard is a controller, so I'll leave this box checked. It is not multi-timbral. In fact, it's just a controller keyboard, so it has no receive channels at all. So I'll uncheck this box. And it has no time code, so I'll uncheck all of these and say OK. Now it's still got this red question mark on it, so while this device is highlighted, I'm going to go up to the top under Studio. I'm going to say Device Icon. I'm going to pick out a new one. This? Nah. I'll just make it a keyboard. That looks nice. And there's my keyboard. Except I do have a MIDI cable coming out of the keyboard into my interface, but I do not have one coming out of the interface into the keyboard. So I'm going to click on this arrow, breaking this connection, and now my keyboard's set up great. Now I'm going to delete this mystery device just so I can show you how to add a new device. It's gone. I'm going to highlight the printer port because that's where my sound module is hooked up. We'll go up to the top under Studio, say New Device. I'm going to find the manufacturer. And there we go. It's Roland. We're going to find the model, if we can. Wow, look at all those. And there it is, SC88. And now OMS has set up the rest of this box automatically. It's not a controller. It is multi-timbral. It does receive on all 16 MIDI channels. So I click OK, and there it is. My studio's all set up. Also remember, in every Opcode application, there's tons of great built-in help under the question mark menu. Now there's just one thing left to do, which is test our studio. So I'm going to go up to the top under the Studio menu, select Test Studio. My cursor turns into a little musical note, and when I play a few keys on my controller keyboard,
MIDI received.
The arrow blinks and I hear a weird,
MIDI received.
spooky voice saying MIDI received. And that means my keyboard's set up great. Now if I move down to my sound module icon and click on it, it should sound like, hey, my dog's on my keyboard again, get down. Oh no, it's just OMS sending out some random note messages to tell me that my sound module's hooked up fine. All right, let's get out of Test Studio mode. Let's save our studio. Of course, our Mac will remind us to save if we quit without saving. I'll say save, and then File, Quit. Reminds me to turn AppleTalk back on, so I'll say OK. And we're all done.
Now we're going to look at Galaxy. Galaxy is great. Galaxy is what's called a patch librarian. Most people will realize two major benefits from using Galaxy. First, it has the capability of publishing a bundle of instrument names. What does that mean? That means when you're sitting at your computer making music and you want a guitar sound, you can click on screen and go through a list of guitar sounds like acoustic guitar, nylon string, jazz guitar, 12-string guitar, and so on, rather than looking at your screen and seeing 24, 25, 26, 27, or having to turn around and look at your sound module to see what sound you're pulling up. The second thing it does is it acts as a librarian of all your sounds. You could have a zillion sounds loaded in your computer, and when you're working on your symphony, you could load just your classical sounds into all your sound sources. And then the next week when you're working on your heavy metal project, you could load just your heavy metal sounds into all your keyboards and sound modules. Now, you don't really need Galaxy to start making music with Vision, but as long as we're here, why don't we just jump in and see how easy it is to publish a bundle of instrument names.
Now, I'll find the Galaxy application on my hard drive, open it, Galaxy. It gives me the AppleTalk warning again, so I'll say turn it off, and OK. The first thing we do is we see a welcome screen. Welcome to Galaxy. It's got a handy little hint on it. That's nice. I'm going to say close. I'm going to say hide others, clean up our screen a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to do under the File menu is select New Bundle. It's going to say select devices to add. It already knows by ESP that I've got an SC88. Isn't that amazing? So I'm going to say OK. And there's our bundle, made up of the different types of tone groups and drum set groups in my sound module. Now, to let Galaxy know what sounds are currently loaded in my SC88, I'm going to go up under Bundle and say Get All Banks from Roland SC88. Now that we've gotten all the sounds, I go up under File and say Save and Make Current. We want to save this in a safe place. I think this is safe, the Galaxy Plus Editors folder. Save bundle as, how about Josh's SC88. Now I'll say Save, and it's saved. Also, don't forget all the great built-in help under the question mark menu. Now I'll say File, Quit, OK, and we're done.
Now let's look at Vision.
Now I'll find the Vision application on my hard drive and double-click it. Actually, I have Studio Vision, but the Midi functions are identical between the two, so it really doesn't matter which one you have. This is the main screen of Vision. If it looks complicated, don't worry, you'll have it all figured out in no time. Everything is carefully laid out for a reason. Up on top, you'll see the control bar. Here's the transport section of the control bar with record, play from beginning, stop, continue, and pause buttons, as well as a really nifty shuttle control. Here's the sequence window. The sequence window contains one or more sequences. Well, what's a sequence? A sequence is music. It can be just one instrument or many instruments. A sequence can be one note, one measure, or 1 hour of music. So, how do you use these sequences? Well, I usually just use each sequence for an entire song. But as you learn Vision, you may want to use each sequence for a different section of a song, or even for different instrument parts that you can combine in different ways. When you open up a sequence by double-clicking it, it brings up the tracks window for that sequence. Here you'll find the meter and tempo controls, and down below are the different tracks where you'll put your different instrument parts. For each track, you have a record, mute, and solo button, as well as a place to type the track name. Now remember in Galaxy, that SC88 bundle that we said save and make current? Watch this. I'll go up under Windows, go down to the Names menu, and there it is. Automatically, it's subscribed to Josh's SC88. And that means that when we go up to choose an instrument sound, we've got all the sounds of the SC88 here to choose from. Wow, look at all those sounds. That's amazing. Except for one thing. I use channel 10 for drums. So when I go to channel 10, do I have to choose my drum set from like harpsichord or bagpipe or round Glock? That's not going to be any fun. Watch this. Under the Windows menu, I'll go down to Names again. And see where it says Channel All, Device Mode SC88 Instruments? I'll highlight this patch name document. Under the Names menu again, I'll say Show Channels. And now I'll go to Channel 10, and instead of SC88 Instruments, I'll say Drum Sets. So now you can see when we're on Channel 10, we have our choice of all the drum sets. Very nice. Vision has tons of great built-in help. Not only are there many subjects underneath the question mark menu, but if you hold down Shift, Option, Command on your keyboard, your cursor turns into a question mark, and wherever you click, it will tell you all about what you're clicking on. The next thing I'm going to do is set up a cool metronome sound. So I'm going to go under Options, Metronome, Metronome Sound, set it to MIDI note, set it to channel 10 that I use for my drums, and now I'm going to pick a couple of notes. First for the accented beat, how about high wood block? And then for the unaccented beat, how about low wood block? Now I'm going to change the velocity to 127 so it's extra loud, and in doing so I'll show you a really neat way to change numbers in Vision. Of course, you could click on the number, type in a new number like 100, and press enter. Or, if I go over the number with my mouse, see the cursor turn into an up arrow and a down arrow? If I make it turn into an up arrow, each time I click my mouse, this number will increase by 1. That's neat. But neater still, if I hold my mouse button down, by dragging my mouse, I can zip to just about any number I want really quickly. That is a very easy way to change numbers. So I'm going to set this velocity to 127. And now we have a cool metronome. Just one more thing to set up. Under the Setups menu, you want Keyboard Through checked. Once you check it once, it should stay that way forever. Now I'm going to set up a tempo here in the Tracks window. I can either click here and type in a tempo, if I know what it is, or click on this and move the mouse up and down. But what if you have a tempo in mind and are not sure exactly what number it is? By tapping the quote key on your keyboard, you can actually tap a tempo in. I think about 85 is what we want. I'm going to choose, let's say channel 1. I'll choose a sound. How about honky tonk? Now we can see we're enabled to record on this top track because of this red R in the record column. We're set up to wait note, so Vision will wait until we start playing to actually start recording. And I'll click the record button. Now, I'll click stop, and there it is. There's what I recorded in the overview section here of the Tracks window. Want to get a closer look? By just double-clicking, I can open up the graphic edit window. Wow, look at all those notes. There's 3 ways to directly alter a note in the graphic edit window with our cursor. If we move our cursor over the middle of a note, notice it changes to those up and down arrows. You can click on a note and drag it to another pitch. If we move our cursor to the end of a note, notice how it changes? We can actually change the duration of a note, how long the key was held down. We could make this note really long. But I'm going to undo that. And if you click on the beginning of a note, you can change where that note happened in time. This note happened a little after beat 3 of measure 3, but if we wanted it on the first beat of measure 3, we could just drag it right over there. Pretty neat. But I'm going to undo that as well. I'm actually going to move this note back to its correct pitch. Now, if we wanted to hear this track, we could press the play from beginning button and then stop, or we could actually press the space bar and then return to stop. If we wanted a really cool way to hear each and every note, if you hold down the command key on your keyboard, your cursor turns into a little speaker. And just by clicking and dragging, you can scrub across your music, which makes it really easy to find wrong notes, wrong chords, right chords. Now, let's talk about zooming in and out. You can use these magnifying glass icons on the edges of the edit window, but you know what I'd like to do is hold down my Option key on my keyboard. My cursor turns into a magnifying glass, and just by clicking, I can enlarge my field of view, thereby reducing the notes. And then to zoom in, I can just draw a rectangle, drag a rectangle around these notes, and zoom in as close as I want. Wow, look at those notes. How about these ones down here? Makes it very easy to get around in these edit windows. Okay, I'm going to close my graphic edit window. I'm going to enable recording on this second track from the top. I'm going to choose channel 2. I'm going to pick a bass sound. How about synth bass 2? And I'll hit record. Oh no! I hit a wrong note in there. Well, let's see how easy that is to find. We'll double click this part. I'll hold my command key down. Ah, those notes. Those are the bad ones. I'm going to hold Option down, zoom in on those two notes, drag my cursor over them to select them, pull them down to the A that they're supposed to be, and now hold Option, zoom back out. There, now that is correct. If we wanted to just hear the last measure of this song, I could click on measure 4 with my cursor and hit the continue button. Or the cool keyboard shortcut to doing that is pressing Command spacebar. Okay, well, I think we need to add a drum track. So I'm going to enable record on this third track. I'm going to go to channel 10. I'm going to pick a drum set. How about dance set? And hit record. Now, I want to add a hi-hat part to this drum part I just recorded on the same track, but without erasing what I've already done. So I'll just go up to the upper left-hand corner, and instead of replace mode, I'm going to change this to overdub. Now, I'm still set up to record on the same track, but it will overdub what I record on top of what I already did. So I'll hit record. And click stop, and now it kept the other drums and added the hi-hat on top. Now, did that sound to you like a guitar player trying to play drums on a keyboard? It did to me. Let's solo the drum track by clicking in the solo column and hear a little bit of it. Turn that off. Yes, we're definitely going to have to clean up that rhythm by quantizing it. But Vision allows you to experiment with different quantized values with the play quantize function here at the bottom of the tracks window. If I turn play quantize to, let's say, quarter notes, our drum track sounds like this. How about eighth notes? Sixteenth notes? How about 16th note triplets? Well, I like that the best. Now, if I didn't want to permanently quantize my drum part for some reason, I could just leave the play quantize set. But you know what? I do want to quantize it. In fact, I want to quantize all three of my tracks. So I'm going to turn this play quantize off. I'm going to unsolo this track. And there's so many different ways to do this, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight all this music over here in the overview section. Under the Windows menu, I'm going to select Quantize. I'm going to set the quantize value to 16th note triplets, and then I'm going to click Quantize. And now all my music is very nicely quantized. Now I'm going to play another part to this song. But instead of playing it in real time, as I did these three tracks, I'm going to play it in step time, which means I'm going to enter the notes just stepping one note at a time. So I'm going to head up in the upper left-hand corner, and instead of overdub, I'm going to say step replace. I'm going to enable recording on this next blank track. I'm going to change to channel 4, and let's pick a sound. How about kalimba? Now, when I press the record button, instead of the metronome, we see this step record box. We can set any duration note you want. I'm going to choose 16th note triplets. And now, as I play each note, it will add a 16th note triplet to our blank track here. Now, I have no idea what that's going to sound like, but let's press stop and play. Wow, not too bad. Now, what if we wanted our kalimba part up an octave? Well, there's so many ways to do this. One of the fastest, I think, is just to double-click, bring up the graphic editor window, press Command A for select all, drag one note, and they all follow. You know, you can even transpose while the song's playing. I think I like it up an octave, so I'll leave it like that. Now let's say we suddenly decided to change snare drums. How easy is that? I'll double-click my drum part. I'll hold Option and zoom in a little bit so I can find the snare drums. There's hi-hat, kick, there's the snares. Now if I click in this gray area to the left, I can drag to highlight a range of notes, or I can just click once and highlight all the snare drums in this track. Now, if I transpose one of them, the rest of them will follow. Let's see how this sounds. What if they were hand claps? What if we wanted hand claps and snare drums? If I hold the Option key and drag, it creates a copy. If I don't want the hand claps anymore, I click once, hit delete, they're history. We'll just stick with that snare drum sound. That's the mark of a great producer, by the way. You always go back to your original idea. So I'm going to close this edit window. And let's do some naming of tracks. I'm going to name this, how about piano, by just clicking into the track name column. Call this bass. These are great names. Drums. Kalimba. And now I want to lock our sounds in. So if I pull this song up a year from now, it'll play with the correct sounds. So over in the patch column, I'm going to click and select the correct sounds for each track. I can always change these sounds. How about synth bass 1 instead of 2? Here's dance set and kalimba. What I did by selecting the patch here was actually insert a patch change at the beginning of the track. Want to see that patch change? All right. Let's select our bass track, and then with the window buttons here, I'm going to select the list view. And if we scroll up to the top, there it is, patch 40, synth bass 2. We can even change it from within this window. Let's change it to a slap bass. We'll solo this track by clicking the solo button. Notice it also solos here, and I'll press the space bar. Okay, how about contrabass? Well, how about synth bass 1? Sure, we'll stick with that. Hey, any other edit windows? Sure. Let's highlight the bass track and look at the notation edit window. Here's the bass part in standard musical notation. Wow. We can choose the notation resolution with this pop-up here. We can use the command key to scrub. And all the same editing shortcuts apply. You can move a note in pitch, duration, or placement, the same way as in the graphic edit window. To add other tracks to our notation view, we can hold the Option key and select them from the title bar. There's the piano track, the kalimba track, and now if we zoom out, we've got a conductor score started here. Now let's say we wanted to do a quick mix of our song. Watch this. I'm going to highlight the first track and hold Shift to highlight the other 3 tracks. Now I'm going to go up under Windows, down to Consoles, and choose console number 1. Wow, look, it's like a mixing console. Now, with this triangle just to the right of the close box, I'm going to say Build Console from Selected Tracks Instruments. And you got it. Here's our mixing board already set up for volume and panning for each of our 4 instruments. We also have mute and solo buttons here. These consoles aren't just for volume and panning. They'll actually control any continuous controller information that your MIDI devices will receive. For example, let's say number of channels 8. Let's go to this first unused fader, number 5. Let's say show all fader info. Let's set this up for, let's say channel 10 for drums. Let's solo our drum track. And instead of volume for this big fader, I'm going to go all the way down here to controller number 91, external effects depth. What's that going to do? Listen, no reverb. Tons of reverb. Can we automate these changes we make in our console faders? Sure. Just make sure we're set up to overdub so you don't erase anything already on that track. Let's go record on our drum track and hit record. Dry. Wet. Press stop, and let's hear that back. Now let's add some volume automation. Let's hear that back. There's another way to automate controller information on tracks. Let's look at that really quick. Let's go into our drum track, highlight it, pull up our graphic editing window, and with this strip chart function, let's pull up fader. Now, let's change to, let's say, channel 10 volume. And look, there's our fader automation changes we made. If we wanted to change them, we could grab the pencil from here. We could type in a 10 over here for resolution. That's usually what I type in. And we could draw our own changes in many different shapes. I'm going to choose the free drawing mode. We can turn it up, down, up, down. Let's hear that. If we don't like these things, we can grab the I-beam cursor here, highlight all this fader automation, and we could say clear, and it's gone. In fact, let's get our external effects depth automation and clear that as well. Now, if we're sequencing linear style, meaning we're doing pretty much our whole song within one sequence, if we wanted to do some arranging over here in the overview section, I could drag this divider so we have a little more room. And then what I like to do is change the display so that it shows blocks of 1 bar. Now, there's the tracks I recorded shown as blocks of 1 bar. Cool. If I want, I could highlight these first 4 measures and then drag them. If I hold the Option key, I can drag them to the right to make a copy. But how am I going to know I'm putting them exactly in the right place? Because if I'm even a little bit off, there's going to be a real stutter or skip in my timing. That's where cursor quantize comes in. I'm going to undo that. And I'm going to show you a way that you can make sure that you're putting things where you want to put them. If I set my cursor quantize to, let's say, whole notes, now when I hold Option and drag these tracks, they're jumping 1 full measure at a time, which means that when I put them at measure 5, I'm sure they're going right to measure 5. Now I'll drag them over to measure 9. So this is a real easy way to arrange your song in terms of copying blocks of measures. But let's say you want to do modular sequencing, where each section of your song goes into a different sequence. Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to highlight these copies we just made and delete them. I'm going to close the tracks window, and I'm going to call this sequence, how about groove? Now, I'm going to say new sequence. And I'm going to record a drum part here. I'm going to set up for wait for note, hit record. Hit stop. I'm going to set my sequence length here to 2 bars. Now I'm going to make sure my sequence length of my groove is set correctly. I'm going to set this to 4 bars. I'm going to call this jungle. And I'm going to add 1 more new sequence. Let's see, I'll go to channel 4, hit record. Hit stop. We'll set a sequence length of 1. Now I'm going to call sequence C. How about break? Now I'm going to create a new sequence and call it song. Now you notice how groove has key A, jungle is B, and break is C. I'm going to remember that. A, B, and C. Now I'm going to record on our first track of our song. I'm going to set step replace. I'm going to hit record, and then I'm going to press B, A, B, C, A. Now you see what it did? It laid out the different sequences in my song jungle, groove, jungle, break, groove. If we hear that, now we can easily rearrange our song just by moving these little blocks around. If I wanted the break to go first before this first jungle groove, I could set my cursor quantized to whole notes. I could grab all these blocks, drag them over one. Then I could highlight this break, hold Option, drag it over to the beginning. And now, if we play our song from the beginning, but wait, there's more. What if I wanted to hear a jungle beat at the same time as this break? Click on it, Option drag, put it on another track. Let's delete it here. And let's put another break over besides this first break. And let's grab all these and drag them over to the left. What's that going to sound like? So you can see that Vision subsequences give you a very powerful, fast, and easy way to arrange your music. Now, of course, normally, every time you record a track or make an edit that you like, that's a keeper, you should always say File, Save. It's very fast. In fact, you can even press Command S while a song's playing and save your song. When you save a song, you're saving all the elements in the sequence window. So I'm going to say File, Save As. We'll call this Josh's Big Hit. And now we're all saved.
Well, as you can imagine, we've just barely scratched the surface of Vision's capabilities. Vision is an extremely powerful program with tons of features no matter what type of musical project you're involved in. But hopefully the information on this video has helped you get your studio set up more easily and also helped you just dive right in and make some music. But for now, I think I'll just say have fun and happy sequencing.